Think objectively with a carnivore diet. Hey, with Shake and Bacon, my name is Bruno Pinucci. I hope you're doing well. So one of the things that people love when they start a new way of eating, despite what it is typically the fact that they feel good. Now, a lot of that probably has a lot to do with the fact that you've taken a lot of junk foods out of your diet. Whether people become vegan, vegetarian, or carnivore, or they're even doing something like a soup diet or anything. Typically, what most ways of eating involve is knocking out junk food. Now, carnivore isn't immune to that. So you have to ask yourself, and I'm going to make a video about this sometime, is carnivore beneficial because it's that good? Because the food is that healthy? Or is it helpful because you've knocked out a lot of the foods that just don't agree with your body? So aside from that point, you have to stop and ask yourself, objectively, is this a good diet for me? Now, there's going to be positives. There's going to be some negatives. Not every diet out there is perfectly positive for everybody out there. So when I started carnivore, the first thing I noticed within days is my joints feel dramatically better. And then from there, I can't say I noticed anything with like mental clarity. I do if I do a 3-day fast on a carnivore diet. I notice day 3, mental clarity. I feel younger mentally and physically. But I don't suffer from an imbalance of chemicals in the body that leads to depression or anxiety or anything like that. So I can't speak to that, though lots of people have gotten benefits from a zero carb or carnivore diet with their mental health. So the beautiful thing about that is they can think more objectively without a twisted or tainted way of thinking. And I don't mean that in a sinister way. It's just not a clear way of thinking. When people can do something like a carnivore diet, usually what happens is they hear about it from somebody, right? And then that person either tells them a lot or they go online and start doing a little more research. Now, what they're quick to find is there's no real science on the carnivore diet because it's a relatively new way of eating. What little science there is very little. And the biggest study that was done was basically a questionnaire, and it asked quite a few hundred people. I think it was something like 2,200 people or more. I forget. It was somewhere around that number. What benefits they noticed on a carnivore diet. And the vast majority of people noticed dramatic benefits. Now you can go to Dr. Sean Baker's website, Rivero.com, and see all sorts of testimonials of people who have undone their health problems and set them into remission with a carnivore diet. Now, there are some people the carnivore diet just doesn't agree with. Maybe it's because they don't like meat in general. Maybe it's because they have convinced themselves that it's just not a healthy diet, and the mind is a powerful thing, and they start eating a carnivore diet and they convince themselves it's the worst thing for them. So it didn't agree with them. Maybe they were doing it wrong. Who knows? But it doesn't agree with everyone. I would like to see those people who said it didn't agree with them and find out what kind of carnivore they were doing, how strict they were, if they were getting enough fat, if they were getting too much protein. I'm really intrigued to talk with those people when they say it doesn't work for them. I like to troubleshoot that. And to do that, you have to be objective. So at that point, when you see there's not much actual clinical science out there on the carnivore diet, the only way you can look up anything on the carnivore diet is people's anecdotal evidence. Now, I am going to start making some videos in the near future, really bashing, quite frankly, the healthcare system as well as the nutrition industry about why so many people are against the carnivore diet in that realm. But aside from that, you have to look at the people that have been doing this before you. Some people have been doing it for months. Some people have been doing it for a handful of years, like myself. Some people have been doing it over a decade. Some people have been doing it decades. And you see the health benefits they've had, and you want to try and find out what they're doing and find out why it's working for them. So you can go on Facebook and find lots of these groups. You can go on YouTube and find lots of these people that are talking about this. And you have to stop and ask yourself at any point, if you try the carnivore diet, is this working for you? And objectively, before you get to that point, you're going to stop and think, well, this goes against everything I've ever heard about nutrition. having a meat and fat-based diet with no vegetables, because vegetables are healthy, well, it turns out they don't agree with everyone, especially if you have any sort of insulin resistance. Any sort of insulin resistance. If you're 40 pounds overweight, there's a good chance you have a mild form of insulin resistance. Your body's not letting you burn your fat as fuel, even if you're 20 pounds overweight. So the one thing you'll notice is when people start doing the carnivore diet is they start losing weight. And that's what attracts some people to the carnivore diet. And there was an awesome guy I met once a couple years ago who said, we came for the vanity and stayed for the sanity. And that's what happens with a lot of people when they turn to a carnivore diet. I know that happened to me. I had already done low carb, zero carb on and off for a while, and it worked really well. But when it came to carnivore, I was a little more hesitant. And because I knew I was increasing my fat a lot, and it turns out I needed that. And that's what made carnivore sustainable for me. But I learned as I went along with carnivore what worked best for me. And the only way to do that is troubleshoot and try different versions of carnivore. Now, you can start up a steep hill and do a very strict version of carnivore, which is what I did. And I stuck with red meat. And it's more satiating, so it's easier to stick to. The problem is, if you're having too much fat in your red meat, you're going to probably get diarrhea for the first 2 or 3 weeks. But if you have leaner foods, it tends to help. If you have smaller meals, it tends to help. It doesn't just shoot right through you. But that's your body flushing water, because you no longer have carbohydrates hydrating your cells. So your body's going to dump a lot of water. The more water you've been retaining, the more water is going to flush. So you're kind of retraining your body. And you have to stop and say, when are the benefits or the risks out of balance? So if you're doing this way of eating and you're losing weight, but you're not feeling good, you have to stop and say, okay, what's going on here? I've been doing this for weeks now. Something's off. Well, you need to stop and question everything you've done. And maybe it's good to, if you don't have that great of a memory, to write everything down daily. Keep a little journal, because that way you're going to be able to look back and say, okay, well, I was eating a lot of chicken those days and turkey. Well, you know what? I had a lot of brain fog and I've been cold a lot. Turns out you might need more fat in your diet. Or maybe you're not losing weight, but you're trimming up a little bit. So your inches are going down, but your weight's staying the same. That could be just flushing water. But if that stays up over a period of months, then you're losing fat. You may want to decide at that point to eat a little. You may decide at that point you want to eat a little leaner or with more fat in your diet, depending on the speed in which you're losing weight. But lots of people get there and their health issues just get better and better. A really good friend of mine's mom has become a strict carnivore in the last few weeks, and she's off 2 of her medications, he was telling me. I think she has a few more to go, and she's just running with it now. She's felt this difference and it's blown her away. And my friend is really impressed to see his mom at her, I think, early 80s, late 70s, accomplishing this. It's something that we all wish we could go back and tell our younger selves about before we got out of shape or unhealthy. But you can't do any of this stuff without stopping and always assessing and always trying to objectively look and think, is this going well for me? And what you want to do is make sure that as your quality of life is getting better, it's reflected in your measurements. And I don't mean your measurements so much as your inches on your waist, but your measurements as far as your mood. Is my mood better? Is my physical endurance better? Is my blood work better? Which parts of my blood work have gotten better? Maybe some have gotten worse. So if you're an overweight guy still, as an example, and you're older and you have high cholesterol and you still have high blood pressure and you still have metabolic syndrome, well, that cholesterol might be a serious issue for you. And you have to stop and objectively think, okay, wait a minute. Is this getting better or is this getting worse? Is the risk worth the reward? So if you're losing a lot of weight, but you're still dealing with some of those issues, well, as you lose weight, you'll notice those issues will probably go away. The interesting thing about carnivore I've noticed is your health issues go away, then you're losing the weight. It's quite fascinating. First time I've ever experienced that in my life was when I started carnivore. And you have to always be measuring. You have to always be checking. You have to be able to separate yourself from what's happening and always look to see how you can tweak it. And to do that, you may have to try lots of different versions of carnivore. There is a strict lion diet where they don't eat salt. There's a looser version of the lion diet where they do the exact same thing, but they eat salt. And that's all you do. There's no vegetables, there's no fruit, there's nothing else in there. And then there's other versions of carnivore that open up into dairy and cheese and other meats. So you want to find what works best for you, and you just have to stop and always analyze and ask yourself, is this better or worse? If it is worse, is it worth all the other benefits? And if you are feeling some benefits, is it worth any negative side effects? So, I mean, what good is doing something like this if you're just going to get harassed by your friends and family to a point that you can't handle that? For you, if you can't figure out how to navigate that situation, maybe this might be something that you're going to have some difficulty with that could really put a bad taste in your mouth, so to speak, with a carnivore diet or with any diet. It's something I'm always doing myself on a carnivore diet. And I've noticed a dramatic amount of health benefits. Even though I've just had open heart surgery, the benefits I've had on a carnivore diet heavily outweigh any of the side effects I might still have because my body isn't finished healing. And once that healing is finished, I'm hopefully going to be down to a relatively healthy weight. My fasting insulin will be well under control, and that's going to probably manage all the other health problems that I have. Interestingly enough, I have cured my allergies of 30 years. I'm going to get into that again in a video coming up. So the long and short of this video is analyze what you're doing, analyze everything, and try and be as objective about it as possible. If you're just biased towards a carnivore diet because you think it's the greatest thing under the sun, and meanwhile it's not agreeing with you, you have to stop and acknowledge what you might have to do differently. And if it is working for you, stop and acknowledge how it's working for you, what works best for you, so that you can better explain it to people when they ask you about it. Because it's important you understand what you're doing to your own body and the benefits or negative side effects you're getting doing something like a carnivore diet or any diet for that matter. Anyway, thanks a lot. I hope you like this video. Cheers.